Hey guys, Art13131, and we are still in week 4. Talk about assignment 8 here, and I call it mapping shapes and shadows. And it's a coat over a chair as the subject matter that you're going to set up. So it's like a still life where you're setting up a scene with a light source. Typically, by the window would be good, where the light is coming sort of from a top right or left angle onto the subject matter, as opposed to behind it or right in front of it. And the left or the right side is better because you're going to create shadow areas better that way. And of course, a strong drawing consists of a lot of contrast in light and dark tones to show the shape of what you're drawing. I find that I'm saying that constantly throughout the semester, but it's the reality of it, and you'll find it in everything. So let's go ahead and I'm going to talk again about the midterm presentation, which I talked a little bit on Monday in that video. I'm also going to send an email about it too, but just to reiterate, um, it's a 5-minute presentation, PowerPoint, Google Slides, or a video or something facsimile thereof, where you can present, scroll through slides, have text, have images. Maybe you're going to talk through it or not, and in a video, or you're just going to show the text. The text needs to describe your subject matter and what you're presenting on, and the various aspects of it, and why you're interested in it, and covering it pretty concisely through a 5-minute presentation. It also is going to consist of at least 5 or more images of what you're talking about, giving various examples. Let's say you're doing it on an artist or an art style or movement. Well, you need to have images that back that up, and 5 or more. It can be on an artist, a particular artist, or a particular art style, or an art movement, an art technique, or something in art history that you're talking about. But you're going to need images to back it up. You're going to need text to back it up. That takes at least 5 minutes to watch and read. And you can time yourself by reading and watching your own presentation and timing it and see how long it takes. And the biggest part, one of the biggest parts that a lot of students kind of forget, but I'll mention it several times, that you need to provide your own artwork on this, your own creation that you developed about whatever you're talking about. It has to relate to it in some fashion. So if it's an artist you're doing, then maybe you're going to do one of their works or something like one of their works. And if it's something else, then you have to relate to it in that way as well. So something you created that you're going to relate to your subject. So that needs to be included in the presentation, typically at the end, possibly. And yeah, so that's basically it in a nutshell. You send that to me by the end of next week, which I'll talk about it again next week. If you have any questions, please ask, and then we can move on from there. But the end of next week would be what? End of next week. Let's see. So that's Sunday the 30th, right? Yeah. Okay. Is that right? Sunday the 30th? No. That's this weekend. Sunday the 6th. At midnight. Sunday the 6th. So it gives you a long time to do this. And during week 5, we don't have any homework, so that gives you a little more time to do that. So it's really only one drawing next week. and then you have your midterm presentation to finish up and send to me in an email attachment. Okay? A regular email attachment. All right, we'll talk about it again. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll send an email out today probably about that, and you can go ahead and check that out as well. Let's look at images of what I'm talking about with this coat over the chair. These are what I consider strong drawings because there's a lot of contrast. There's very darks and very lights and everything in between. So if you count them up, there's probably 7 different tone levels in here, right? From the very lightest to the next one to maybe, a little darker there, and then a little darker there, and then real dark, and then very dark. There's a lot of maybe 7 levels between totally light and dark. You have all the other levels, which we call midtones, okay? That's what's creating the shape, because you're gradually going from light into dark, and then maybe suddenly back into another shade, and then gradually back into another shade from lights to darks. And this shows a rippling of the folds and the crevices within this garment. I think this is probably a blanket, but it can be a blanket. It can be a coat or blanket, a hoodie, coat or blanket, something that's going to actually drape over the chair, so that we get all these turns and folds and crevices and valleys and dips and turns that you're going to be able to shade. You're learning to shade this texture, which is probably smooth, so you're not using scratchy marks with the tip of your pencil. You're using nice smooth shading marks with the side of your pencil that gradually go from one tone to the next. You see how that gradually goes to one tone to the next. So it's showing a rolling motion. It shows the shape of this garment as it kind of rolls and dips in, and then rolls back out and dips in, and rolls back out and dips in, rolls back out, dips in, and rolls back out. And that's what you're showing with the shading you're putting in. And without that shading, it would look flat. Nobody'd know that it was dipping and turning and folding and all that stuff. You wouldn't see it. Also, put the chair in. Wooden chairs are more interesting than others, I think, but you can use whatever chair. If you're going to show the floor, then you're going to show a cast shadow as well. Here's another version with a cast shadow down here. So the light's coming from the top right, sort of, because the cast shadow's on the left on the floor. Okay. One thing to notice about chairs is the closest leg to you is going to be longer and maybe taller depending on which your angle you're looking at. So they're not all the same length on the hitting the floor unless you're down on the floor. Then your perspective would be showing all the legs hitting the floor at the same time. If you're standing up or in the middle, this leg's going to look like it's longer because it's closer to you. It actually does appear to be longer when things are closer to you than they are away, even though both these legs are the same distance, the same length. This one being behind is going to look a little shorter possibly. So that's something to notice about what you're setting up and drawing from. Okay, just because the legs are on the ground doesn't mean they're all the same in perspective. This one may be that it's in front of this one looking like it's going further down, because the floor is going to tilt toward you this way unless you're down on the floor where it's totally flat. If you look, every time you move, you change perspective. So if you're going higher and higher and higher, the chair changes perspective all the time. You go lower and lower and lower, it changes. If you're got it at eye level like this one, and the other one I think was above the seat. So the seat was above your eye level. The eye level's maybe around here. So you're looking down on the seat on this one. This one, they're sort of sitting on the ground, maybe looking at it, and the seat is not visible from the top, so it's up this way. It's all perspective. And before going into a lot of 1 and 2 point perspectives, distance in a 2 point perspective, You just sort of have to draw from what you are seeing, and then I'll critique it and help you fix the errors. But actually, you have to learn to be very aware of what's in front of you you're drawing from. You have to look at it and notice every aspect about it, where the perspective is, how long a leg is compared to another one, where the other runs go and how angled they are, where the dark and light shadowing is. Light here, dark here. Lighter here, darker here. Lighter here, darker here. All around the chair and the garment as well. So this is things you have to start being aware of and notice, and then start using your graphite pencil, side of the pencil, most of the time, because there really isn't a border around any of this. It's just shades that end and the background begins. There's no line that is perceived. Although I see they put one up here, it kind of helps the drawing slightly so it doesn't get lost from the background, because they have a reflection mark on the top of the chair. So that does work, but around the whole darn thing, no. It's not going to be accurate. It's going to look silly. It won't look real. And now and then you can sneak one in here to emphasize something like a reflection mark on the top of the chair. So then it can be something passable. But if you had a line around everything, it wouldn't work. Up here on the garment, they don't have a line. They just use it very light right there where the reflection area is, and the background is darker than that, but not as dark as this. Wherever you have a background, you want to make sure that it separates itself from your subject, so that this tone isn't as similar to the other tones you're matching it with. Or otherwise, your subject gets lost in the background. And it's a very strong drawing to put a background in. This one has one too. It's very light. But it gets rid of that white, paper white. If the wall is not paper white or the surroundings, don't put it in like that way. You don't have to draw exactly everything in the background. You can sort of be a little sort of not exactly showing detail, but something more rubbed out or blurry, and that's fine. And nobody needs to really know that there's a lot of stuff back there. You don't have to draw it. But if you put in a background tone, it looks good. It brings out the chair. The chair or whatever subject is going to come off the page at you when you do that. Okay, so that's a good way to do it. Smudge in or just lightly, not scratchedly, lightly and smoothly. I talked about smudgers too, right? Smudging using a Q-tip or a rag over your finger, or going and buying a smudging tool, which is like a pencil made out of cardboard or thick paper compressed with a tip on it, and you're using that paper tip to sort of smudge around your graphite and smooth it, or just make different nuance like this has. It's not totally smooth through the whole thing. It's lights and darks, right? Yeah. All right, let's talk about the homework, which is drawing eyes. This is your eyes in a mirror, or a photograph of your eyes that you're going to draw from. I'll provide a video on this, but typically eyes have a section in the middle that is at least as wide as the eye. So you have this width here, then another width of an eye in there. It's not real close. And look and notice that about your own image. And I would put a light source that is either one side or the other. Or you can do it this way too, where you have, but there's going to be shading on the sides of the nose bridge, up into the brow. And notice that eyes are not round or oval. They're sort of almond shaped, depending on the expression of the eyes. Here's a lot of different views of eyes, drawings. But they come to sort of a really closely rounded edge there, and more of a peak at the ends, on the outside. And the inside has that sort of little rounded area there, but It doesn't come and go like an oval or something, like a complete oval shape. So notice that about your eyes. Notice the shape of them as you're doing the outside of the lids. Then notice also that the iris, the colored part, is typically covered up more by the top lid than the bottom. More than not, this one it's a little bit covered here, but then more on the top. More than not, it either touches the bottom lid, the iris, or it is just about ready to touch it, like this one. And look at your eyes, and you'll notice that. So the top is covered a little bit more by the upper eyelid. Also, you want to notice possibly there's a shadow from the upper eyelid onto the eye, and that gives it more shape. That actually starts showing that it's round. Your eyeball is round when you put that shadow. This one doesn't have a shadow, but it has a reflection mark on each eye from light source. You'll see that in your eyes too. You'll see a reflection from something in the room on your eyeball. So put that in by erasing out or just leaving it void, but don't put a border around it. Don't put a line around, like a box around that, because it's not accurate. Just leave it blank like these are. Of course, that's showing a box, but that might be the frame of the window. I'm not sure, but most of these I think look better when they do not have the box around them, around the reflection mark on the eye. Now that could be big or small or varied, like this is like 3 of them. Some have more, 2 or 1 reflection mark on them, but it starts making the eye look round when you do that. Also, more than not, the sides of the eyeball on each corner is kind of shaded in there. It's not totally white throughout the whole thing. There is shadowing on the eyeball and in the corners of the eyes. See how that's a little darker in there? A little darker in there? That's starting to show that the eye is round. If you leave it totally like these ones, don't look as round, right? Because they're totally white. And that's the same thing with cartoon eyes. They look flat. They don't really look all that round because it's not important with the media they're using or the audience that's watching. They don't care about that. In realism, yeah, they care about that. They want to see the eye look as real as possible. Now, everybody has some sort of color to their eyes, and pretty much. Um, in most cases, or not, and it could be a little darker than others. But most of the time, there's a variation to that color. It's not just one solid color. There's little imperfections in there. You'll see them in your eyes. Even dark brown eyes have darker and lighter areas to them. So, I think this is actually a photograph, but oh well, I'm just showing you. But then the pupil, which is the dark part, is right in the middle of the eye. This is showing it kind of up on the top, which isn't accurate. Nobody has eyes like that. Well, maybe somebody does. If you have eyes like that, show me a photo so I can go, okay, you do have eyes where your iris and your pupil are not matched up. I guess some people do, but typically no, they're matched up to where that pupil is in the middle. I'm not saying it's right or wrong either way. It's just the way eyes are, and I would say for the most part, the pupil is in the middle of the iris. Okay, and so that's what you want to draw, is like that. You don't have to draw the whole nose. Eyebrows, yes. The top of the brow, or between the eye and the brow, yes. And typically there's an eyelid line in there, or shading line, not a real line. And you have your eyebrow, which could be drawn in various ways. Go to Bing and look at these and see the differences in how, and match it up to what you're drawing. What you want to do is give it the most shape possible. That's where the shading comes in. And you want to give it the proportions. You don't want them too close together. So there's a good eye length in the middle, right here. between the eyes. Same distance as probably here to here from there to there. And that's going to map it out so that you, and then here's another good way to do the eyes, and then put the iris in there. It's bigger than you think. Don't make them really small and beady, or the pupil. Don't make that really dinky or beady or too dilated like anime eyes or something. They that's really not accurate. I mean, look at what you're looking at in your. This one's really dilated. Might be, when you get in a darker light, your eyes dilate, or if you're on drugs and stuff, your eyes dilate. Whether the eye doctor gives you drops like that, they'll be dilated, but mostly not. So it's somewhere in the middle, and then you got your hairs coming out, your eyelid hairs, eyelashes, eyelashes, eyelid hairs. Yeah, and so they are not perfect unless you have made them that way artificially. Then go ahead and draw that. But I'm just saying that normal, without having something like this, even these aren't exactly perfect. You want to draw your eyes with these fake eyelashes on them, or you've used a lot of mascara, that's fine. But let's be as accurate as possible, give them as much shape as possible. The white part is not totally white. There's darker areas on the corners. There may be a shadow from the eyelid above on the eye. There's a reflection mark. Give the space in the middle and have the right shape. It's not a complete oval shape. There's a difference. They're kind of almond with a little twist right here. All right, so let's do that. And any questions, let me know, and look for that email on the midterm presentation, and we'll talk to you next week.